we're down to 4 more movies left, and this one, like I said in my previous video, as this one is my favorite sequel, which this one was kinda a bit tragic for this one. And a little bit dark, and it might have a little Halloween theme in a way. The film opens with Winston and Tony training the pups about fear. We also finally see Lily makes her return in this sequel, but her husband Garth is absent as he's on a hunting trip. Lily announces she wants to take the pups on a field trip on going to the Shadow Forest. However, this actually shocked Tony when he himself knows what the forest is, and Lily explains that she was safe after being there the other day ago. So Humphrey and Lily takes the pups to go on a trip to explore the forest, until later they encountered a porcupine named Floyd, played by Blackie Rose, as he tries to warn them about the forest, as he tries to tell them to go back, but they didn't listen. So they continued on some more, even if they ignored his warning. Runt climbs on the tree to see the view of the Sawtooth Cave, until suddenly he sees a ghost head, as it made him got stunned the next after he fell off from the tree, and then they brought him home while he was still stunned yet. Tony begins to notice the signs of what they saw when they mentioned the wind and stuff, and then we get a flashback on what Tony explains the whole tale on how he discovered the location they were at, as he brought Lyle and Link, both voiced by Solomon Gardner, to go check out the Sawtooth Cave. This was actually surprising to see Tony as a young wolf from the flashback scene, which, to be honest, he looks like a recolor Shaky model. The twins were too scared the next, as Tony decided to climb up the cave instead to go on his own, and then next thing, he spotted out the ghost, and he begins to run away. Runt wakes up from having a nightmare, then decides to take Stinky and Claudette to the Shadow Forest on seeing the Sawtooth Cave. Then later, they encountered 2 porcupines, as they didn't listen from their advice while passing by them. The trio arrives at the Sawtooth Cave, but later they got chased as they hid in the bush. Runt begins to see the cave and realizes the ghost was actually a guardian of the strange wolf, but it shows where Stinky is at. Then the pups were saving him from falling, and then they headed back telling their parents on what they just saw. The pups notices their parents are following them, even though they decide to play along to act like they will leave the pups alone, but plan to still following them anyway due to being very suspicious of the way they act. Humphrey talks to Marcel and Patty about the problems with the pups that's been going on lately, and then Marcel and Patty decide to go follow them while being sneaky without getting caught. Through the whole moments on hiding in the forest, the pups realizes that Marcel and Patty were following them, as both Stinky and Claudette decides to go distract them while Runt goes back to the Sawtooth Cave. Runt meets a strange wolf, as it turns out to be Daria, played by Gina K. Bose, that's been inside the cave for a long time. She tells Runt to come visit tomorrow. The twins arrive back to the Sawtooth Cave. As it turns out, these two from the flashback, they did a rock, paper, scissors to see who will go first, but instead it's called
Ready? Leaf, teeth, rock.
How clever is that to name the game on rock, paper, scissors, but for wolves? Till the ghost arrives and scares them off. The twins tries to tell Winston and Tony about what they saw, but nobody believes them as they think it's a myth to them. Then later they decide to gather a pack to head back to the Sawtooth Cave. Runt wakes up and sees them gathering as they decide to get info from Runt on what he saw from the Sawtooth Cave. And later, Runt returns back to go warn Daria about the twins and the other wolves are after her. We get a lore flashback as seen from the beginning of the movie on Daria's past during her pup years, as it turned out to be she was born blind. Her mother saves her to escape from being attacked as they went far away into the forest, which was Shadow Forest, and they were hiding in the bushes, and then she left Daria behind as a sacrifice. Then Floyd escorts her out to safety, and so on. Now you know where that this whole part from the hiding in the bush part was actually the beginning of the movie, that this was a flashback. They arrived in the cave while others sneaked out as they used the porcupines as a distraction. Kate and Humphrey realizes Runt is missing as they begin to go looking for them. Runt, however, is escorting out to Rabbit Poo Mountain, but the wind, which was the guardian spirit of that ghost, is trying to forbid her to leave, for her safety. Kate and Humphrey encounters the two porcupines as they ask where is Runt, as they explained where he went and stuff, which I did like the moment how Humphrey was doing the begging pose, to be honest. It's still like one of my favorite moments right there. Daria and Floyd almost got ran over, but was safe. Then later, Humphrey and Kate found Runt and decides to help him out as they escorted Daria back to her homeland safe and sound, especially to reunite with Daria's family and her pack. Humphrey and Runt distracts one of the antagonists while the pack tells Daria about that her mother is actually dead. Then they escaped. Until then, the action began. They made it back to the Shadow Forest as Runt calls out the ghost for it to appear that was chasing Daria, and then suddenly...
Ultimate.
This is actually still an epic scene here on how it finished him off, which he ended up disappeared the next. Winston, Tony, and Eve and the pack arrive next as Runt introduced Daria. Winston decides to welcome Daria, and we get this aww moment here. And then Daria was never seen in the later sequels ever again. This whole film makes it kind of like a Halloween-like theme in a way. I actually did like this movie. It makes you feel really bad for Daria when you see this film, especially, from her flashback and, her past and everything. I mean, it was actually a little tragic there about how she lost her mother and all that. And Daria, however, she is actually one of my fave characters, as I mentioned it in my top 20 fave characters, as Daria is my number 3 of the top 20. Although I did like how they gave us a little flashback on Tony's young wolf years on the flashback scene. But then again, like I mentioned, he's a recolored Shaky, if you can tell how he looks by this model. I still did like this movie yet. But too bad Daria never returned, or at least make a cameo in the background in the later sequels. But then again, I really like this one so far. I did like how they added effects on creating the ghost spirit that was protecting Daria since she was a pup. But pack your bags, because we're going on a trip on the next movie, which this one, well... this is where we get to the final 4 films of the sequels.